Okay, so here's the thing. As I see my hair. So here's the thing is I have my video for Edith Hamilton. I just need to actually sit down and do it. I have all the notes and everything. Just sit down and do it. So I should have that tomorrow or Saturday. But because this is my life. Now, last year, I planned to release a video on Ed Andrews. If you remember, he's the baseball player. And that never happened. Well, I was going through my laptop, cleaning out files and all of that. I found a recording, and boy, it's a good thing that recording didn't. Oh, good heavens. So, I was blown away. I was like, wait a minute. I'm sure that I meant to do it again, and it just never happened. And so we're going to talk about Ed Andrews because I really want to get this video out. And I'm sorry that I am so sorry. I'm actually a fan of Ed Andrews. And actually, this is just ridiculous. I need clips. I need, oh man. I was in high school in the 90s and the butterfly clips, I never really had butterfly clips. I was a person that never was into that. But I feel like I need them now because I fiddle with my hair so much. But anyway, I am sorry that I didn't get the Ed Andrews video out. So I'm sorry about that. But I am a fan of Ed Andrews, and actually it's kind of a blessing in disguise, as I was saying before my brain glitched like that, because I actually found an article that is just perfect. So, because really all I was finding was like, I found enough articles that showed his stats. So, and I will put those in the just not all of them. I just one article, the Major League Baseball is what I go with and everything. So let's talk about Ed Andrews. So, you know, this is the thing is he was born April 5th, 1859 in Painesville, Ohio. Now, his childhood, even the article that I'm using didn't really touch on his childhood. It's like it just wasn't there. The only thing that I could find was that and it's on Wikipedia is that his father was a boat captain on the Great Lakes. Keep that in mind. It will play a part later on. I found that interesting when I was going through and reading up on him. Now, he went to Western Reserve University. It is now Case Western Reserve University. And it didn't say what he majored in. I couldn't find the article doesn't say either what he majored in either. Like Doc Bushong, he was a dentist. That's all he wanted to do because that was like a family thing from what I remember. And but for those of you that go to the university or whatever, uh, Ed Andrews was a member of Delta Kappa Epsilon. I know that's a big deal. Art school doesn't have that. It didn't have fraternities or anything like that. We made them up. Yeah, art college isn't special like that. We don't have fraternities. So, let me come over here. He he actually, the funny thing about Ed Andrews is he really saw baseball when he first started baseball. It was more of a hobby. He didn't see it as something that he wanted full time. And then it took up 10 years of his life. So so let's talk about that. So it was 1883. It didn't say when he graduated. When did he graduate? Let's see. Let me see here. Uh he Yeah, he says that he came to make baseball a temporary profession that grew into one that consumed nearly a full decade of his life. In 1883, he was still attending the university and playing amateur ball in Cleveland when he passed his 24th birthday. So he was 24 years old. Um, yeah, he was 5'8" and 160 pounds. And um, I wish it could say what he majored in. Maybe he majored in sports. That's the thing about those universities also, the universities and colleges, because especially even in the women's colleges, they had those, I come across a lot of those pictures. I think I even restored one of them where it shows women's wrestling. It shows them with the sports equipment and everything. So they had um, sports as part of the college um, itinerary. And so they don't so much anymore. I guess it depends on the college. Again, I went to art school. What do I know? Well, before we make fun of art school too much, because originally I didn't have to take math or science, and then towards the end, they're like, you know what, you got to take science. And all of a sudden, I'm like, but that wasn't the original plan. Well, plans change. It's like, I guess so. So yeah, there were a lot of those colleges back then. You took um like weightlifting. Yeah, they have uh class where they have like those weightlifting apparatuses and everything with the on the walls and all that. Both men and women had to do that. Man, those when I was researching for because one of the characters in my book was a former boxer, and when I was researching, those women boxers were fierce. And then because I know I'm going off track a little bit, but there was the silent film. It was a documentary with the two sisters that were boxers. Women boxers, just they were. It's like the men were scared of the women boxers. They were mean. They were tough stuff. But so yeah. Anyway, um sports were part of the the curriculum. But I'm just curious what Ed Andrews, George Ed Andrews went into, what George Andrews went into for school, because Doc Bushong went in for dentistry. But I couldn't find it anywhere. So he's 24 and he was playing amateur uh baseball. And let's see, it says that after college, he played with a team in Arkin, Ohio, then traveled to Toledo. Um, he had friends on the Northwestern League Club. I looked to see if that was still a thing. I couldn't find anything. And then he played on a team called the Providence Grays. Now, Providence Grays, which were part of the National League, they were in Rhode Island. And I tried to find a picture that he was in. I came up with nothing. So I'll put a picture up here of that I did find of the baseball team, but I just couldn't find one of him as part of their team. So, but yeah, they were a Rhode Island team, and it says that he did so well playing third base that he was asked by the manager. He was then invited by this gentleman if he would see a future in baseball. Now, this gentleman is named Harry Wright. I'll put his picture here. Harry Wright is like a legend in baseball. He played baseball and he managed baseball. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and he's he he knew the sport. There were a lot of baseball players that were conditioned by Harry Wright. I will put his information in the description box. I highly recommend that you read up on him. I didn't really know that much about him. I mean, because he at Andrews, as we will see, actually um was learned a lot from him through going through the Philadelphia Quakers. And um, he was very stern with his players. He was, as you will see. Now, at first, because I'm getting ahead of myself, and I'm sorry about that. Now, another thing that I want to point out that this article points out, and I already knew from looking at a lot of different baseball players from the Victorian era, and I think also a series that I highly recommend is the Ken Burns baseball series. That I think that's one of his best documentary series. I remember watching it on PBS. I was in high school when it came out, and I think that's probably his best, as well as the Civil War series. But I happen to like the baseball series a little bit more. Nothing against the Civil War series. Seriously, this is ridiculous. Let's do this. Let's take this and put it back here. Sorry, my hair has grown to the point where it's doing that, so can't do nothing with it. Now, as I was saying, when it comes to the names of a lot of these players, what they would do is they would use their middle name. So George Edward Andrews, he would he's using Ed Andrews for his professional name. A lot of baseball players did that. And I believe Ken Burns, it's been a long time since I've seen the series, but it seems like he mentioned that as well. Well, the person who wrote this article, and it's a very well written article, says the same thing. And of course they had their nicknames as well. And a lot of them had, like Doc Bushong, and I think I'm going to be playing with my hair a lot, and I'm sorry. I try not to touch my hair a lot, but it's driving me nuts. Okay, moving on. So Harry Wright had asked, moving on from, so Harry Wright had asked Ed Andrews about being a professional ball player. Now, Ed Andrews, of course, has said, I just see it as a hobby. I find it fun to do, and I just want to keep it that way. Now, it took me a long time to figure out what it was he actually did, and as a profession. What did he go into college for? It sounds to me like he was just a salesman. This was during the time when there were door-to-door salesmen, a lot of door-to-door. So did he do that? Was he behind a desk? I don't know. Okay, I did try to look that up. If you know, go ahead and tell us, because I'm just speculating here. I hate doing that. I really do. And well, as it turns out, he finally he finally got a hold, I think it was like in within a week period, a couple weeks or even a month. Um, in that time frame, he got a hold of Harry Wright and said, "You know what? Why not? I'll go ahead and I will make this my profession." Because, and then Harry Wright said, "Well, that's great because I'm going to start managing the Philadelphia Quakers." And and so they worked together and they continued to be friends until Harry Wright's death. And let's see, when did he die? In 1895. Now, Andrew said that he came to the spring training, to the training field, and the way that he describes it is a lot like the best way to describe it is if you've seen A League of Their Own, and when the sisters come to that uh the playing field for when they're going to be matched up to their teams. He says some were in rags, some were in tags, and some were in gowns. Gowns was another word for being dressed to the nines, basically wearing their finest. And so as soon as, and then he further describes that as soon as Harry Wright showed up, everybody was organized. So this just shows how Harry Wright worked with his players. It was like they could be as disorganized as possible. And then as soon as Harry Wright showed up, the disorganization was gone. And so he made his major league debut May 1st, 1884. And I'm not really going to go over all the stats and everything because I'm not very good at all of that. But I will have, of course, this in the description box and his stats and all of that in the description box. Yeah, I don't do well with baseball stats. I have a bunch of baseball cards from like 1990. I still have my 1990, 91 that could be 89, 90. And all the stats on the back. I never knew what that meant. No, I didn't know what that meant at all. But so his first team that he ever played with was the Philadelphia Quakers. And um what were his, let's see. Well, that was the National League. I don't know why I played. Throughout this video, it's gonna be back and forth Major League, National League because so just be aware of that, but I will have the information in the description box. And another thing to understand is there were a lot of teams that changed between Major League and National League. The Brooklyn Dodgers have changed their names so many times. They used in the Victorian era, they were the Brooklyn Bridegrooms. That team has changed their names so many times. In fact, it seems like they changed their name. They had a manager. Again, I'm going off track a little bit, but it seems like they had a manager that had been their manager for several years, like 30, 40 years. The manager died, and out of tribute, they named the team after that manager for like a year, year and a half. And then they went to Brooklyn Dodgers, and the Brooklyn Dodgers was, yeah, now it's I don't know where they're at right now. But so yeah, there are a lot of teams. Um, and it seems like the Giants were in New York, if I remember correctly. I could be way off on that, but I know that the Giants weren't always the San Francisco Giants. And so there were a lot of teams that have switched over from Major League to National League and everything. So I am trying. In fact, in the 1930s story that I'm writing, there's the main character is a journalist, and so I was looking up different teams, and New York had too many teams back then. Don't hoard them all for yourself. Silly, silly, silly. We had in Washington, there was a time when we had, I think, three. Yeah, seems like it. I can't remember, but yeah, now we had just have the Mariners. Yeah. I love how people are like, your team sucks. It's like, we know. Don't don't tell us what we already know. Guys, do you want us to be mad? Because we're not. It used to be good, but anyway, back to Andrews. So this is the thing about Andrews is that he talks about how when he was in a game, early in his career, and I believe he started when he first started with the Philadelphia Quakers, and they were at a game in with Detroit. They were with Detroit and everything, and the umpire had his back to him, and he had like cut third base. I'm not sure exactly what that means. So, um, so the to recap a little bit, game against Detroit, he had cut third base when he had seen the umpire's back was to him. Um, and for some reason, when I first read that, I thought that meant that he had just um, stolen a base or something. But apparently, that's not what it means because it says, as Andrews took a seat on the Philadelphia bench after scoring, well, yeah, that does mean that he stole. Uh, Wright reproachfully said, I don't want any games won that way. Andrews claimed he never again did anything that deceitful on the ball field while playing for Wright. And I guess this is an instance of how different the game is from then to now. Um, because I would think that I wouldn't think that it would be a big deal to steal base. Now again, you can explain the like this whole thing with cutting third base and you know I had to read it several times, and again I'm having to read it a few times now. I would think that it wouldn't be such a big deal, but that's the other thing to understand is that the game was played so differently then. I saw on Twitter where people were just throwing fits about, well, why was he considered the great Bambino? Why was Babe Ruth even allowed to play and blah 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 blah. And it's like the game was different back then. The game has been played differently in my lifetime. The rules and regulations have changed in my lifetime. And honest to goodness, it really has. And so in fact, oh, who was it? Conan O'Brien. Now, Conan O'Brien does a lot of these things where, like he goes to different countries and he experiences their culture and everything. And but like here in the US, he will go to I saw where he went to like Taco Bell and he goes to a coffee shop or a coffee house. He went to Guinness and well, he also did like a reenactment of the Civil War. He also found a place where they play baseball as it was played way back when. I will put that in the description box. It was very interesting. I really enjoyed watching that. Sometimes he can be extremely over. I actually enjoy Conan O'Brien, but that one he was it was a lot of fun. So it was a lot of fun watching how they played baseball way back when. So I will put that in the description box and you can see how it was played back then. And yeah, he gets a little goofy as Conan does, but he's actually very respectful. And so and but yeah, that's something that we all have to understand, me included, a lot of times. Just like here, it seems like he just stole base, and apparently that was a no-no back then. So, uh, A- Andrews needed a timeout after that, apparently. Yeah, I would have never thought that stealing, yeah, because now it's just an everyday occurrence, and but back then that was not okay. So, but anyway, before I get too wordy like I'm known to do, um, so he played for the Philadelphia Quakers from 1884 to 1889. And there was, just like back, just like today, there are times where times don't change. Now he was a great player. He was considered one of the best of his time. Remember, he just wanted to do this as a hobby. Now, I'm not saying that he was the best of the best. Okay, of because I'm not familiar with every ball player at the time. Okay, and it could be that this particular writer is a fan of this particular of um Ed Andrews. So yeah, it happens. It happens. I'm not saying anything against this writer. No, this is a very well written article. So, but here's the thing to understand is that when it came to they did trades just like we do now with ball players and everything, but the money situation could get very sticky. And so, and apparently it did kind of wreck his reputation a little bit. Now, Ed Andrews was actually a very, he wasn't so loudmouth and outspoken about money situations, but in the one instance that he was, he, because um he he was going to leave for another team and they were going to give him a certain amount of money. This is what I'm understanding. Again, my brain could be complete mush, and you can correct me and explain it better in the description box. So from what it seems, he was leaving um the Quakers, going to another team. And then it turns out that they found out about a certain amount of money and all this stuff. There was like an exchange and everything. And then it turns out that when they found out about it, they were like, oh, because of this, it feels a little bit like blackmail. Well, Ed Andrews was like, hold up, what are you talking about blackmail? I'm not going to blackmail the team. He went ahead and he played for this team. When he came back, there was still sour grapes toward, yeah. So he went ahead and he came back and played a little bit for the Philadelphia Quakers, but the feeling was not the same as it had been before. So, and everything. Yeah, let's see where it was. Yeah, it talks about how he had been playing. Now, at one point, where does it say here? He was the National League stolen base leader in 1886. Um, so again, I'm not sure why. Maybe again, But here it says uh, Harry Wright's club was built almost completely around players like Ed Andrews, good at everything but hitting, which you need. Is this where Casey at the bat came? I love Casey at the bat. I absolutely love that poem. I, I love the cartoon, everything. Okay, so Andrews led all Quakers regulars in both batting average and slugging average in 1887. Okay, and then it says the marks. His defense and fine base running likewise made him a player in great demand. That's what I was talking about. After the season, Andrews told a Philadelphia reporter that he had not been reserved by Philadelphia in 1887 and had agreed to play for $1,800, which was $200 less than he'd receive as a rookie, which he received as a rookie in 1884. Again, these numbers are from back then. Um, yeah, I'm not sure what they were, what they would be now. So I should have checked that. Only after Wright had promised to take care of him if he had a good year. He then revealed that he wanted $5,000 and that Andrews wanted $5,000 and held out until March of 1888. With a college education and good off-season job as a salesman, yeah, he's a salesman. So he was in a stronger position than most players to demand the salary. See, that's what he said. That's what he was saying. And other teams were eager to purchase him. So, and then it talks about how the Quakers, suspecting tampering, particularly by Detroit, uh, regarded his holdout as a form of blackmail, and they had no interest in selling him. That's okay. And then it, and that could be another player I was thinking of because I was also reading up on another player at the same time. But or it could be further down that I'm thinking. Um, so it goes on to talk about a Boston, they okay, they didn't want to sell him. Uh, they discussed extravagant terms, offering him to Boston for a third baseman named Billy Nash, plus several $1,000s in cash, and suggesting a trade for Hardy Richardson, which was the best player on Detroit's pennant-winning team. And then the Quakers finally concluded that Andrews meant it when he said he would sit out rather than play in Philadelphia again. See, and then that whole thing pretty much complicated the whole thing, and Andrews signed for considerably, let's see, rejoined Philadelphia, and the Boston management left angry at what they regarded as a breach of faith. Yeah, that's what it was. It was Boston that was upset, and Andrews signed for considerably less than he asking price, but he should have kept his mouth shut. Yeah, usually he didn't talk business, but it turned out that when he said that, it made things a big old mess. Yeah, there were some that like to I've come across baseball players that loved to brag about what was put in their pocket and everything, and to be honest, some of them like they weren't very good at the game, not as good as what Ed Andrews or Doc Bashong were, but for some reason they were put up front as the best of the, yeah, who knows why they were paid so much. I wasn't there, I don't know. So yeah, that's what the whole thing went on. And in a nutshell, it was in my brain, it just didn't come out right. And despite the ill will between Andrews and the Quakers front office, he led the team in hits. So he continued to play for the Quakers. And um, yeah, so there was bad blood, and you would expect it. And I mean, there have, you look at nowadays, if something like that were to happen, they would just be fired or traded. We don't want you here. So it just shows a difference in the times. I mean, yeah, Boston was upset, and rightfully so. So yeah, I'm surprised that it sounded like he was kind of being a little snarky too, because he brought up his college degree. I'm sorry, dude, but you're not the only one with a college degree. Because the last guy we talked about, this was honestly, he was the one that this was a hobby. It really didn't mean anything. And he wanted to be a dentist more than he wanted to be a ball player. It's just putting extra change in his pocket. And yeah, so I don't know. And so in 1888, Ed Andrews got married. Now, this is the thing, is that there was like this, I don't want to say superstition, but there was like this, and it could be superstition, but there was like this whole thing with ball players that when you get married, it ruins the game. And once Ed Andrews caught the baseball bug, he had made it clear that he was not going to get married. And it just reminded me of that commercial that starts, I think it's an insurance commercial that starts out, I am never getting married. And well, he got married. And the funny thing about the Brooklyn Bridegrooms is that it was a bunch of men that they changed the name of the team because that summer a whole bunch of them got married. I don't remember what they were called before that, but so yeah, it was like it wasn't an unwritten rule or anything. It was just like, well, when you get married, you lose interest in the game. Well, as it turns out, when Ed Andrews got married to, what was his wife's name? Mary Kirby? Was that her name? I think that was her name. Uh, yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, Mary Frances Kirby. It says here that she was friends with the daughters of Harry Wright. So, um, so when he got married, a lot of his high stats that he had, he was like this great, uh, and all those stats were starting to fall once he got married. And and it says also he began to lose some of his fascination with baseball. Well, yeah, he's got, he's got a wife now. He's got a new fascination. Oh. Oh, good heavens. Yeah, I said before that I was going to do a video on Billy Sunday, and I think I talked about this before. Billy Sunday, when he met his wife. Now, Billy Sunday, which his name fits, Billy Sunday was actually a baseball player. And before he became a pastor, he was one of those fire and brimstone. I mean, he was eccentric. I mean, in fact, he dedicated Longview. And But the funny thing about it is that he, when he met his wife, her dad said absolutely not because baseball players are immoral. They smoke, they drink, they have terrible manners and all this stuff. And he says, "My daughter is not marrying a baseball player." So he retired from baseball. And but the funny thing about it is that he he left baseball, but then he became this crazy pastor. Yeah, fire and brimstone pastor, but he would jump on the pulpit. He would be like screaming and yelling and all this stuff and everything. And I guess the dad was like, "Oh gosh, sometimes I wish he'd go back to baseball." Oh, good heavens. Yeah. Yeah, so apparently when Ed Andrews got married, and again, Mary Kirby was friends with Harry Wright's daughters. Um, he started to lose interest in baseball. Uh, had new interest. Oh, but it sparked up again when somebody from Detroit asked him if he would be interested to uh, watch some spring training in 1889. No, he had, let's see, that was, I gotta look again. Yeah, because he had left the Philadelphia Quakers in 1889. So he got married, left the Philadelphia Quakers. Yeah, he was, I think that was his first retirement, basically. Well, the Indianapolis Hoosiers was his next stop. But this particular fella wanted him as a substitute. And he didn't want to be sold to Washington, which I don't know if that's Washington, D.C. or Washington here. Again, we had baseball teams here throughout the years and decades. Not just the Mariners. Okay, yeah, there were we're not weird, okay? We are. Um, there was after that. So he didn't really retire. He was just doing other things. I don't know if he had children. I couldn't find that anywhere. I don't know if he and his wife had kids or not. So, but he was sold to the Indianapolis Hoosiers in 1889. He played with them for a year. He was a center field, which I didn't even say what he played. Uh, I think it was just third base, and then he was a batter. But yeah, it says here because I was reading through his stats and everything. Sorry. It's mentioning a lot of his stats, which is good. Um, but it does mention that the Indianapolis correspondent remarked that Andrews was an excellent base coacher. And as a result, uh, this gentleman had dropped himself in the batting order so that either Andrews or this gentleman or someone else would be available to coach the bases. So he was a base coach. The one thing that, and this is for any sport, I mean, if you are able to work anywhere in the sport, um, that's fantastic. If you have that talent and that skill, that makes you a great asset to the sport. You know, um, I talk about as a dancer, I wasn't very good at dancing because I was overweight. I was I was the big girl, but I mean, I had the skill, I could move my feet around and everything, but as for if I were to do the leaps, no. Yeah, Margot Fontaine, I was not. I was not that graceful looking. That was not pretty to look at. But what's funny is because I still had all that training and everything, I was able to teach. I could do all that other stuff. And I had a lot of other, just like with at Andrews, you see it in a lot of other places as well. So, don't be discouraged. But I'm not comparing myself to Ed Andrews by any means. I'm just making a point. Please understand that. His skills far surpass from what I'm reading. Now, it says that he returned uh his interest in the game. That's all it took. Just, he got married and so, it makes me laugh that they had like the superstition, and I'm just going to call it a superstition at this point. That they had the superstition that when you get married, it destroys the game, your passion for the game. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, there were women that absolutely loved baseball. They would, especially like I was saying earlier about women boxers. Obviously, there were women who were absolutely in love with the game. And especially when I was researching for boxing, because boxing was considered a gentleman's sport. There were women who would sneak in to see it. They wanted in on the action too. Don't do that. People are silly. Silly, silly, silly. Oh, good heavens. Now it says here that Andrews put his education to use by writing much of the publicity material at the time of the Players League organization and signed with Ward's uh, Brooklyn Club. Who is Ward? Ward. I don't know. Anyway, it'll say. I lost the person's first name. Okay, joining the two. So I'm guessing he went into journalism if it's writing, if it's this kind of writing that he went to college for. If he went into college for journalism or something, because it says he put his education to use by writing much of the publicity material for the organization. Um, okay. But earlier it said that he was a salesman. If you're, I mean, you need to put food on the table and pay bills, it makes sense. Uh, he joined the two outfielders that flanked him when he occupied center field with Indianapolis. Okay, so he's now with the Brooklyn Ward's Wonders. Now, another thing about these teams is that they will often have names of the uh manager, like I had mentioned before. And so this is Brooklyn Ward Wonders. And so Emmett Siri and Jack McGeechee, I'm guessing is how you say it. Okay, but these three men doomed Brooklyn to be and also ran. Okay, so the 1890 Players League race, when they logged the worst offensive numbers of all the regular outfielders in the league, with the lone exception of Larry Twitchell. Okay, Andrews' decline continued in 1891 after he joined. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about when he then joined the Cincinnati Kelly Killers. Now, Cincinnati Kelly Killers is of course named after King Kelly. This manager is named King Kelly. He's another one that King Kelly is also known as $10,000 Kelly. He, I'll put his information in the description box. He's another one, but Harry Wright is above. But when it comes to the Cincinnati Kelly Killers, Ed Andrews had a run-in with the manager. Yeah, King Kelly. So he's playing for Cincinnati and ended up having a falling out with King Kelly. As it turns out, they had this road trip and King Kelly left the team. And he left the team because he had an injury. Um, he and his business manager, Frank Bancroft, left. It had to do with an injury. However, and they left Ed Andrews in charge. Okay, they left him in charge. And this is another one where Ed Andrews just puts his foot in his mouth and just runs. It just keeps running his mouth. He told reporters that Kelly, 2 days before, had confided in him that he was going to take a vacation. Andrews at first thought Kelly was joking, but Kelly really did leave for a brief spell. And Andrews said that he had no idea where the manager had gone. Okay. And he just couldn't stop talking. So then King Kelly comes back saying that he had only taken time off to rest an injury and he was rightfully furious at Andrews for stirring up a hornet's nest. Like, telephones existed, my man. All you had to do, yeah, because at this point, telephones were a thing. In the 1890s, telegrams. Just get in touch with him or just say nothing. That's all it takes. Oh, yeah, pretty much Kelly, King Kelly decided that Andrews didn't exist after that. It was like, no, uh, he replaced Ed Andrews. Now, Ed Andrews had been doing really well for the Cincinnati Killers, Kelly Killers. He was replaced with this particular fella, and As it turns out, it didn't help the Cincinnati Kill. And Andrews Andrews pretty much made it worse because he was asked why he and King Kelly fell out of favor, and he says he didn't know where Kelly was, and when asked, he told the truth and said so. But that wasn't the truth. Yeah. This is a moment where you just swallow your pride and you just say, I messed up. We get it. You're a great baseball player, but you done screwed up, pal. Yeah, pretty much after this, he went back home to Ohio and he decided that he wasn't going to play baseball after that. He had pretty much retired from baseball. Um, he wasn't interested after that. And I give him props for that. I mean, after you screw up so badly, you know, I mean, he had a great thing with Harry Wright. He had some screw ups here and there with other teams and everything, but actually, this was the biggest fuck up. It was really bad. I mean, when you mess up with the manager like that, I mean, I don't really want to compare him with this guy. Nobody likes him, but with, well, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. Not to Ed Andrews. Nobody deserves that. I think you know where I was going with that, but no. I mean, it's no, I won't do that. Used to play on the Mariners, and he doesn't anymore. Let's just say that. He that shall not be named. Guy used to be a good player. Now he's just an ass. Anyway, so he basically retired from baseball, went home, and by 18 by the 1890s he had moved to Florida. Now, here's the thing about Florida. I have read where he decided to be a pineapple farmer. I have also read where he had a orange farm. Let's just come into agreement that he had a citrus farm. Either way, I love it. I absolutely love it. I love that this guy spent over a decade um playing baseball, loved the sport, or almost a decade. Let's say almost a decade. He played baseball, was really good at it, and then just decided, you know what? I'm gonna grow citrus. Whether it's pineapple or orange, orange orchards or whatever, I don't care. It's great. Now, the other thing is that um he was neighbors with Emmett Seary, if you remember Emmett Seary, and um they were on the uh Indianapolis Hooters and Brooklyn Wards together, and I think even the Cincinnati Kelly Killers together. Um, so I think they were on those three teams together at one time. It could be just two. But yeah, they were neighbors and they were farming the same thing. So whichever that was. Now, It also turns out that what else does it say he did? He was also into yachting. Now, if you remember, his dad was boating in the Great Lakes. He was um, a sailor in the Great Lakes. So that's why it's funny that it comes back around. He was in, and he wrote. Let's see, a skilled stenographer and typist. He carved. It says here he carved a subsidiary career as a yachting writer and was known as Captain George Andrews. Now, his career in baseball doesn't end. As it turns out, oh, what year was that? What year was that? What year was that? In 1895, there was in Florida what's known as the Great Freeze. I will put information in the description box about that. So in 1895, the Great Freeze just completely wiped out citrus crops. And so Andrews had to do something. His crops were gone. What does he do? He returns to baseball. However, it's not to play. No, he umpires. He umpires in the National League. Now, again, I'm not sure which, because Philadelphia Quakers, I believe, was the National League, and I don't know what other teams were. I will post it in the description box and try to keep up, and I can't. It's just whatever. Um, terrible. I'm terrible at it. But anyway, he umpired in the National League. Now he did suffer an injury. Now, I thought that his injury happened, he suffered an ankle injury, and I thought that it happened while he was playing baseball. No, it happened when he was during his umpire career. It turns out that he was struck by a batted ball. There was a ball that ricocheted and hit his ankle. Again, one thing to remember is that um, the safety uh, stuff wasn't there at the time. They didn't have the cage helmets back then. They had I mean, you see, I'm sure I have it up here of the padding on the front. Yeah, but it wasn't as padded as today. In fact, even when I'm sure you're tired of hearing me talk about researching for that book that I released, but there was a lot of research that I had to do just even for just the boxing. I'm surprised that the boxers went in with so little padding in there that actually padded gloves for boxers is more recent than you would expect, that you would, and of course there are people, when it comes to boxing, I know I'm going off track a little bit. When it comes to boxing, there are people who go barefisted or they wrap I was fascinated by that. And but this is about baseball. Anyway, um now there's a code of rules for National League umpires, and that was released in 1898. They want to credit Andrews. However, the credit should have gone to Henry Chadwick. So that's under debate as to who actually deserves credit for that. I believe there was also debate over the padded glove with Doc Bushong. So, yeah. um, Yeah, who was it that was bringing the Wilkes Barre record wrote that the credit should have gone to Henry Chadwick. I think that's the same gentleman. Uh, yeah, I think that's the same guy that we talked about in the Doc Bashong video, having to do with the padded glove. And yeah, that sounds familiar. I'll have to look. Now he resigned in 1899 as umpire, but it also says here that in the late 1890s, when Henry, oh, what's his name? Flagler, I'm sorry if I say it incorrectly, created two teams of black baseball players to entertain guests. He hired Andrews to run the baseball operations. So there were African American teams. And so he was there. He also, in 1916, was a traveling business manager for the Boston Braves at, at one time. So he was a manager. Andrew, now with all of this, of course, um, George Edward Andrews passed away of a heart attack at the age of 75 on August 12th in 1934. So, yeah, but for someone who said it's just a hobby, it's just a hobby, and it took up his entire life. He ended up playing for over a decade and umpiring. He even managed a team, and uh, he might have written a code of rules. Again, I think that Henry Chadwick was the same one that was in that had to do with the glove for Doc Bashong. Um, so he did a lot of umpiring. He did a lot, he did suffer an injury. He stuck his foot in his mouth a couple of times. Who hasn't? Who hasn't done that? I do it. It's oh, who hasn't screwed up more than once? But he had a successful career as a ball player. He was the pineapple farm, you know, the citrus farm. Let's just say here it says that um he had 50,000 pineapples ready for the upcoming season. And that's why he ignored all these contracts for baseball. And it was just that great freeze. And I'll put information in the description box for that. And but anyway, I will have all the information for you in the description box concerning him and Harry Wright and Great Freeze and King Kelly and all of that. So, but anyway, this is George Edward Andrews.